We contacted the Foreign Office because we wanted to ask them if they would now take similar action against illicit money from other countries. The Foreign Office declined to be interviewed for this documentary. In order to help it seize Russian assets, the UK passed the Economic Crime Act. The aim of the Act is to help law enforcement identify and seize illicit money in the UK.
The recent Economic Crime Act basically passed into law that any trusts that are involved in the ownership network of a property now have to declare the beneficial ownership to HMRC. However, that trust register is not public, so we're not entirely sure what information is even on it, or whether that information is verified, or how effective it is. Overseas trusts that own UK property will also have to register, well, under law will have to register there. I don't know how much that will be enforced in practice. It's hard to say.
It's not really clear how exactly that's going to be implemented, and so for example, if we look at the register of persons with significant control over UK companies, a lot of people complied with that. A lot of companies complied with that, but a lot didn't. They declared what appeared to be potentially nominees.
Now, the UK government has promised to reform Companies House. At the moment, Companies House is not empowered to check and verify the information that is submitted to it. It's quite possible to write down, like I said, Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, not the real beneficial owner, and no one's really going to check that information.
And so when we look at setting up something similar for the property register, we're likely to encounter the same kind of problems. How many of them are actually going to comply? And if they do, how do we know that that's the real beneficiary who owns that? How do we verify that? It's not hard to see why UK companies have become a vehicle of choice for corrupt actors, for money launderers to use to move and hide their wealth, because the enforcement is weak.
We wanted to speak to the NCA about what they felt would help them tackle the issue of money laundering in the UK. The NCA did not agree to speak to us. The NCA is a department of the British Home Office. We were interested to find out if the NCA felt it could act outside of the ministry it forms a part of, or whether its prosecutions were directed by the interests of the government, rather than in the interests of the prosecution of crime. In February 2022, The Guardian newspaper reported that the former Conservative minister, Lord Foulkes, who attempted to introduce a public register of overseas property owners in 2017 and 2018, was approached by civil servants from 4 government departments who told him to drop the public register of overseas property owners. Lord Foulkes told the newspaper that it is a real irony that our reputation for protecting the rule of law is one of the things that attracts people who have very little regard for the rule of law themselves and come from countries which ignore it almost altogether. We approached the FATF, the National Crime Agency, the Foreign Office, John Glenn MP, the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, and Priti Patel MP in charge of the Home Office. None of these individuals and organisations agreed to take part in this documentary. But when we contacted Imran Khan, the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan agreed to our request for an interview.
My question is, how are you? So you're not going to be in the judge?
No.
Okay, so is this sort of like a documentary?
Yes,
it's
a documentary about individuals who become very wealthy by being at the centre of power and currently have a lot of wealth in London, especially in property.
Corruption is not just an issue for Pakistan. It is an issue for all the poor countries. In fact, I've come to this conclusion that countries are poor only because of corruption, and corruption of the elite. It's the corruption of the powerful that destroys a country, not the corruption of the weak. When I, as a Prime Minister, if I want to make money from my country, steal money and then send it abroad, I can only do it if I weaken the state institutions that would check my corruption. So the institutions get corrupt and they get weaker and they cannot stand in front of the powerful. The richer countries must come forward and treat money taken out of poor countries, money laundered out of poor countries, the same way as terror financing and as drug money. Because these two, terror financing and drug money, affect the richer countries, the laws are very strict. But there's hardly, any attempt to stop this plunder of the poor countries. I feel that there is no incentive for rich countries to repatriate money or take action against these people because they benefit from them. There are countries that are benefiting from money stolen from our countries and which are parked there. They're benefiting from billions of dollars which flow into their properties and their businesses stolen from this country. So what incentive would they have? We are the ones who suffer. And this is the dilemma. We don't have the resources to get the money back, and they don't have any incentive to send it back to us. So this is the big problem which the entire developing world is facing. I guess it's a question of now hiring more experts.